everyone, and welcome to this session. My name is Daniela Angarita. I am the Market Research and Outreach Manager in the Census Communications Division at Statistics Canada. The Census Communications Division is responsible for communication, branding, and engaging various audiences across Canada while promoting the census. Our project objectives with Environics Analytics was to leverage licensed data products and the Envision platform to help support recruitment initiatives for census enumerators to decrease the response times for those hardest to enumerate audience groups, as well as to help inform the branding and communication strategy to determine specific tactics to promote the 2021 census. So today during the session, we will cover 3 target groups that we developed with the help of Environics Analytics. So there are 3 target groups that we focused on at Census Communications in preparation for the 2021 census: recruitment, collection, and advertising target groups. So first, let's start off with the recruitment target groups. There were 3 objectives we had in mind while defining our recruitment target groups: ensuring a sufficient number of applications for the number of jobs, increasing the number of applications in hard-to-recruit areas in particular, as well as identifying opportunity target groups to maximize communications return on investment. These objectives were aligned with the overall census program objectives and really highlight how the recruitment target groups will be used to support communications activities. This is what our segmentation journey looked like. So as a step 1, we looked at past census staff data to understand who was applying and where. Next, as a step 2, through a partnership with Environics, they helped us analyze this data to create actionable target groups, leveraging behavioral and lifestyle databases. Environics presented us with a variety of target groups and categorized them based on the target group's likelihood to apply and to be hired for an enumerator position. From there, we narrowed it down further and identified 6 target groups considered to be the most relevant based on historical knowledge, new areas of opportunity, and the group's characteristics. As step 3, we developed comprehensive profiles of these 6 target groups with Environics' guidance and using the databases we licensed. We also built personas to illustrate how the different target groups will come in contact with communications recruitment phase. And finally, at step 4, we are now implementing this segmentation information and has really helped us plan and has shaped many of our communications and outreach activities focused around recruitment for the census. Here you can see the initial 14 groups that were identified. 2 important factors we considered were the target group size and the rate at which each of these groups had been hired in the past. So these were 2 important factors in further narrowing down those 14 groups into the final 6 target groups. This was another chart that helped us illustrate and evaluate the rates at which each target group had applied and been hired in the past. So it really helped us define and prioritize the target groups we were going to select, and understanding how these groups and the rates at which they were hired and applied could help us identify in terms of groups where we wanted to either increase the application rate or we saw an opportunity from the hired rates which told us that they had the characteristics that we require for census enumerators or that were a best fit for them. On the screen, you can see the 6 recruitment target groups we arrived at for communications efforts. Some groups, including retirees and recent graduates, were no surprise since we had previously targeted these groups in the past. We also identified some family groups with certain characteristics that make them likely to be interested in an enumerator role. Some of those key characteristics we consider for each group included demographics, motivations, and lifestyle, group size, bilingualism, and past participation or interest in census jobs. We are also considering how certain audience groups may have been impacted, may continue to be impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. For example, If there continue to be business closures in the service industry, we could see job opportunities for youth, and particularly students, who may be more limited in opportunities in the coming months and may be interested in applying for census jobs. So these are considerations that we'll continue to keep in mind and see how they evolve. On the screen, you're seeing 5 social values that were chosen to help understand how the groups think. What this helped us do is develop messaging and also understand how we can benefit from messaging efficiencies across groups, meaning that if there are 2 groups that we can target with the same types of messaging, we will do so, and then increase our return on investment on that particular communications tactic. So a few examples we could highlight are that French-speaking segments tend to value active government and are less likely to value pride. Younger family groups such as Indigenous enumerators and status-driven immigrant families are more likely to feel like they don't have enough time in the day. So what that means for us is that we would stress the flexibility, or we would highlight the flexibility of our census jobs. When we looked at the media usage for our segments, the target groups tend to use a mix of media platforms. What was particularly interesting is that those who job search online are very likely to use LinkedIn. So this is the platform that we are incorporating into our tactics. The second part of our segmentation strategy were our census collection target groups. These cover a much broader scope since the census is meant to enumerate every household in Canada. We had a few key objectives for our collection segmentation. So those were to identify easier and harder to enumerate audiences to target communications efforts and really understand their profiles, to increase self-response rates of harder to enumerate groups through compelling and pointed messaging, as well as outreach activities, and to increase overall census participation of harder to enumerate groups. So we conducted an internal analysis where we regrouped demographic characteristics and past census response behaviors and arrived at 88 regional clusters. However, those were too many to target, too many target groups for our tactics. So we further regrouped them into 12 audience segments, which we refer to as metaclusters. So the graphic that you're seeing on the right illustrates how messaging and tactics will be used to interact with audiences at different levels. So at the top of the pyramid, there are broad key messages that will be present in communications with all groups. And as we get towards the bottom, we get into the more targeted tactics. So for instance, that can include regional outreach tactics that have more granular targeting capacity. So this is where some of the 88 regional clusters considerations come in mind. All this to say that we are keeping various levels of targeting in mind, depending on the channel and the tactic that we are carrying out. So we have categorized our 12 audience segments as either easier or harder to enumerate. Harder to enumerate just means that these are audiences that have historically either responded to the census questionnaire later than desired, or that required a little bit more intervention, such as follow-up by an enumerator. Nevertheless, our objective is to share information with all Canadians so they can complete their census questionnaire online, ideally as soon as possible, and our messaging reflects that. So these 12 audience segments are the base for our marketing and outreach efforts, and we develop profiles for each of them that could be used by the various sections within our team, depending on their area of responsibility. In these profiles, we leveraged data from the databases that you see at the bottom of the screen. So they're really complete profiles and offer a variety of insights, whether it is from communications channels consumption or lifestyle. So it really enables different levels of targeting depending on the tactic. To exemplify how we're going to be reaching certain population groups, we developed a few personas for our collection segmentation. So for one of our harder to enumerate segments, urban seniors, we created Thomas. So although demographics and interests are important, which is what you're seeing on the left-hand side of the screen, creating effective messaging in our communications activity is key for us. So we look closely at the values Thomas cares about and can tailor our messaging to be more impactful to this group, depending on what resonates the most with them. To represent one of our easier to enumerate segments, rural Francophones, we created Mark. So, and just as with Thomas, we pay close attention to what values he cares about to use the most impactful messaging and imagery possible. So for instance, he identifies with Canadian values and traditions. So highlighting the history of the census and linking it to the Canadian identity would resonate with him. On this slide, we highlight the communications and outreach tactics we would use to reach either Thomas or Mark, and the overlap of tactics that have the potential to reach both of these personas. So we have a variety of tactics planned across online and offline channels, and based on our target group's lifestyle or preferences, we are more likely to reach them via different channels. So one thing that's important to highlight is that we have a greater number of tactics aimed at influencing our harder to enumerate segments compared to easier to enumerate groups, as you're seeing on the slide. And this is to action on the knowledge that our harder to enumerate segments require a little bit more intervention or incentive to complete the census questionnaire. So the third part of our segmentation strategy are our advertising target groups. So due to the wide reach of paid channels, it was recommended that our 6 harder to enumerate segments that you saw earlier for our marketing and outreach activities be condensed further. So grouping efficiencies were defined based on the shared characteristics and social values of the 6 groups. That is how we arrived at the 3 groups that you're seeing on the left. So those are the younger diverse urbanites, the outer city residents, and the striving renters. So to give you an idea of who these groups are based on the insights we gathered from the databases, is that younger diverse urbanites are guided by emotions, they are enthusiastic about technology, and believe it is the best tool for facing today's challenges. Outer city residents are particularly interested in what is happening in their neighborhood, city, town, or region. Conversely, to the younger diverse urbanites, this audience feels more threatened by technological changes and also shows a tendency to mistrust advertising and reject consumer society. So that is therein lies the challenge to reach this group. And striving renters, they are concerned about their financial future. And some members tend to question authority and challenge societal rules and norms. So as we're developing messaging for our advertising campaign, these are perspectives that we're keeping in mind in messaging to ensure to focus or avoid certain messaging based on what would be likely to resonate with this audience. I would also highlight that these are target groups. So our target advertising campaign is also complemented by a mass population campaign, which is meant to reach all Canadians since the census is a national program. We also develop personas for the 3 advertising target groups to better understand and adapt messaging. So based on this group's social values, we would highlight how census data is used for community programs and how their contribution by answering the census questionnaire will make a difference. I also want to take a moment to highlight some of the changes we are seeing because of the COVID pandemic that impact our advertising as well as our overall communication strategies. And so we've needed to adapt for them. So for instance, many Canadians are now teleworking, which means less travel time and commuting, which has an impact on exposure to some media types such as radio and out of home. But this also means that people are spending more time on other activities such as hobbies, social media, or even keeping kids at home entertained. So these are some considerations and shifts we've had to make to a lot of our communications tactics. So media outlets like smaller print publications and radio stations may not be available. And the ever-changing digital space may bring about new digital platforms, or older platforms may become relevant again. So all this to say that these are some of the considerations that our team is keeping in mind, and at the same time having our target audiences in mind to try to foresee what channels or messaging will help us most effectively reach Canadians and make the 2021 census a success. Thank you very much for listening to this presentation. Now I'd be happy to take any questions from the audience. Looking forward to hearing from you.